Hey everybody. Doing another teaching video here, and this one I wrote quite a while back, December 2nd, 2014. I titled it Plea for Dialogue and Doctrine is what I'm calling this one. And I wasn't too excited about doing this article. We're coming to the end of this series that I've done over the last several years. And then we're gonna start something new, which I'm excited about. I'm excited to get into something new, so I'm just kind of forcing myself to do these last few. I think I've got 3 left that we're gonna do. And I was reading through this article earlier today, and I wasn't that impressed with it. I suppose when I wrote it, I was much more zealous and aggressive for doctrine. Like I've mellowed over the years and become less argumentative, less passionate. I wrestle internally. Like, I don't know if it's a good thing or not. Like, I believe that truth needs to be vigorously defended. And if you believe a particular doctrine or teaching is true, you ought to stand for that. You ought to fight for that. You ought to try to persuade and convince other believers for the purpose of the glorification of God. Like if what I'm teaching is true, then it's good. It's beneficial. It's wholesome for the believer. That truth is our goal in our learning. Like, we're coming to a knowledge of the truth, and Jesus said that He is the truth. So understanding the Scriptures and coming to a knowledge of the truth is coming to know Jesus Christ better. And so, like, when you find believers that are not walking in a particular truth, it's grievous, because it's like there's a glory you haven't yet discovered. I'm trying to explain to you the reason we persuade is because I've seen an aspect of the characteristic of Jesus Christ through His Word that is glorious and marvelous and beautiful and amazing and stunning and awe-inspiring, and you want other believers to participate in that. You want other believers to see that truth. And so we try to persuade them. When I wrote this 8 years ago, I don't know, that was part of my heart, but I think there's also just, I guess I like to debate. I don't necessarily like to argue. It's not an argument, but I feel like we learn when we debate. If you have a position, I like to take the opposite position, just so I can get clarity on what you believe, so that you can present facts to me, and vice versa. Like, I just feel like debate is a really good way to learn, because in a debate you're going to use your best ammunition, so to speak. You're going to present the facts as you know them. You're going to present all the information you have. And the problem with debate, though, is there's a fine line where we can step into pride, and it becomes just a thing about proving your point. It becomes just wanting to be right. And so then, like, what happens then is a lot of times the people you're talking to can perceive that and will shut down and won't receive what's being said, and vice versa. You become unteachable yourself. And I notice that a lot in myself when if you allow emotion to come into a debate, it causes a defensiveness which just shuts your mind down. It's your pride gets in the way of learning. So there has to be this balance. Perhaps that's what's meant when they say zeal with knowledge. When I believe, I don't know where it says that, somewhere in the Scriptures, but to have zeal without knowledge. And I suppose knowledge comes with maturity, with temperance, with a calming of yourself, a calming of the emotions. So if I present a truth and you disagree with it, let me hear your disagreements. Let me hear why. And if I don't have pride there, if I don't put up the defenses, that's how you learn. That's how you remain teachable. If you have actual scriptural evidence to back your point, then I have to adjust what I believe, and vice versa. And so I just feel like the dialogue is lacking when it comes to doctrine. Like, people just learn what they learn, believe what they believe, and shut down and won't hear. At least that's been my experience. People won't hear contrary evidence. They won't listen. It just goes in one ear and out the other. And like I say, that's a pride thing, and I have it as well. If somebody's trying to correct my understanding on a particular thing, I'll notice within myself when I start to get defensive, there's a pride there, and it makes you unteachable. So there has to be a balance. And over the years, like I say, I've just grown weary of trying to persuade other believers. And so I've just mellowed a lot. So when I was reading through this article that I wrote back in 2014, I was like, I just don't have that same zeal anymore. But we're going to trust that there's some truth in this. We're going to trust that God will lead us in this article, and I'll interject in my current thoughts versus what I wrote back then, and perhaps just kind of add to this article, my current position. But dialogue and doctrine are important, and truth is important. It's important that we're all striving for truth, that we don't get locked in our ways and shut down. If somebody comes to you with a scriptural idea and has scriptural evidence for it, if it opposes what you believe, we have to find a way to remain teachable, to remain calm and humble, and listen and say, am I wrong on this? And then to test everything by the light of the scriptures, to study it out and see, is this true? Have I misunderstood this? Am I wrong on this? And if we just shut that down, if we say, we're not going to discuss doctrine, or we're just not going to talk about that, then we're robbing ourselves. And like I say, when I'm thinking about this clearly, when I'm thinking about it in purity, it's there are certain truths. There's certain key points. Like my entire walk, the Lord has really just emphasized certain parts of his character, certain teachings of his that have just stood out to me and inflamed my passions and caused me to love doctrine and to love the understanding of scriptures, the understanding of who God is and his character. And these things are so glorious to me. They bring so much rejoicing to my heart that I want others to experience. And so if you're off on something, it's grievous, and I want to try to correct. And vice versa. I would hope the same is true for me. If I'm wrong on something, hopefully, somebody will come to me and point that out, and will prove it through the scriptures. And I hope I'll be humble enough to hear it and to study the scriptures out to see whether or not what they're saying is true. So anyways, with all that as a preface, we're just going to jump into this article. As always, I like to pray before getting into it, so if you want to pray with me, I'd appreciate it. Lord, I pray for clarity as I read this. I think when I wrote this article, I was inflamed with zeal and passion. Whether correctly or incorrectly, it caused me to vigorously have these thoughts and vigorously have this position in mind, and to want to defend it with all my might and strength and intellect, Lord. That has mellowed, Lord, and I don't know if that's maturity or if I've just lost some of the zeal. I don't know. I would pray, Lord, that you would give us zeal for doctrine tempered with love. That you would give us a passion for truth, mellowed. You said that knowledge from above is first pure and peaceable and yielding. And so I would pray that we'd be able to have that balance of zeal with peaceful submission, not willing to argue or fight or bring emotion and anger into it, but to just speak the truth in love, Lord. And perhaps that's what it was. I was just lacking love. I had the zeal without the love. I had the passion without the compassion. And so perhaps that's what's changed over the years, Lord. I don't know, but I pray that some good would come out of this article, that you would enlighten our eyes, that you would help us to have teachable hearts, to be humble, and to seek your glory and truth, Lord, to worship you with all our minds, to know you in truth, to have correct understanding, to come to, as a body, that we would come to one mind, one knowledge. There's one truth, and it's in your word, and help us to come to a collective understanding of that word, Lord. I pray that you would glorify yourself in this, and that you would keep us free from error, Lord. I love you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Alright, so like I say, I titled this A Plea for Dialogue and Doctrine. I titled it something different, but I don't like the way I worded it earlier, so that's what we're going to call it. But it starts here. I get that my abrasive and unrelenting passion can come across to some as unloving. And like I said, one of the things I've learned is perhaps it was unloving. And so I get that people were perceiving that, especially if there was some truth in it. At the time, I didn't think there was any unlove in it, because I thought, there's a love for the glory of God. So I understand that my unwavering stance on things, my dogmatic positions, can be off-putting. And I realize that I often don't take feelings into consideration. I don't take people's emotions into consideration when I'm searching for truth, because I personally don't really care about feelings. Not that I'm cold, but I just feel like feelings shouldn't matter when it comes to truth. Like truth is all that matters. What is true and what isn't. It doesn't matter how it makes me feel. I ought to submit to the truth. And I would hope that I'm personally willing to adjust my own worldview, my own doctrines, to coincide with truth. Truth is the ultimate aim. And because I want that for myself, I'm hoping that I can get that from others. To just put your feelings aside and just search for the absolutes. That in itself, I don't think is unloving. So again, this is why I struggled with whether or not to do this article, because I think I've come to see that at the time I wrote this, I didn't think I was unloving, and I thought I'm loving truth, I'm loving the glory of God, and that supersedes everybody's feelings. And I think I've started to see that when somebody really believes something and you attack that, we take that as a personal attack on us, because that belief is so associated with who we are that it feels like you're attacking the individual rather than the ideology. It feels like a personal attack. And so we, like, zeal with love, truth with love, takes that into consideration and learns how to speak, how to formulate with that in mind, how to speak truths with delicacy, with grace. And I didn't have that at the time, and I still probably don't have that, but at least I'm starting to understand that. When I wrote this article, I don't think I had that. It was just, if I see an error, I'm attacking it, regardless of your feelings. If I see something wrong or something that I perceive as wrong, it's getting attacked because the truth is at stake. The glory of God is at stake. And as a believer, we must come to a common understanding. So keep that in mind as I read this. Just keep in mind that my position has changed. So I do love my fellow believers, which is why I so desperately want us to walk in truth, to have a right understanding of God. For a correct view of God draws us closer to Him, creating greater joy and admiration, while allowing us to fellowship on a deeper and more intimate level. That is love. A greater love for God and a greater love for each other through truth. So again, I was seeing, at the time I wrote this, I was seeing the glory of God as the ultimate form of love. And the unwavering, unyielding defense of the truth as a love for truth. And I saw that as superseding love for others. Now I'm starting to come around to a balance here. So my expectations are that you as a believer, and this, I do hold to this still, it is an expectation. I'm just going to try to be more considerate about feelings and learn that, and I've learned that arguing doesn't work. I've learned somewhat to be yielding. I still, if somebody wants to, like, in the past, if I had posted something and somebody wanted to debate it, I would go hard against that. Or in personal conversations, if somebody presents a position that I believe is an error, I would just full force attack it. And I've learned through that process that it's like just beating your head against a wall because of the emotional aspect of it. People put their guard up and you just can't get through it. And so you just end up wearying yourself. I would just get emotionally exhausted. Like, Lord, why can't they see the truth? And it's because of the arrogant presumption that I could intellectually argue somebody into the truth. But God grants understanding. And so I've learned over time that if somebody wants to argue a point, there's no point in arguing because they've already formulated a position and they've put their defenses up and you're not getting through that. And so that's where in Timothy, where it says, knowledge from above or wisdom from above is yielding. If you perceive an argument, now there's a difference between stating an opposition and arguing, and that takes discernment. If you tell me something and I have a different opinion, I'm not necessarily argumentative. You have to discern, is there room for dialogue here? Is there room, are we both humble enough to examine this, to look at this clearly? Or is it just going to be the butting of heads? And so discernment has learned to scale back. And if I perceive that somebody has already formulated an opinion, they're not willing to discuss, they just want to argue their position, that's not worth my energy anymore. It's exhausting to me, and it's not going to produce any fruit. So my expectations are that as believers, we should be able to back up and prove our positions with the scriptures, to defend your position, which is what apologetics is. I think, where does it say, always be ready to give a defense of the faith? Does it say that? Or the hope that's in you? I don't know. I'm getting the scriptures mixed up in my mind. But when we disagree with each other, The loving thing to do, the correct thing to do, is to set aside our feelings, and that's humbling ourselves, and to struggle together until we reach an agreement. Then fellowship can continue on a deeper, more meaningful way, and God can be seen in a purer light. If truth is our ultimate aim, we want to see the glory of God in truth, and we remain humble with each other, and then we can examine the issue with the scriptures as our plumb line, and hopefully come to a common understanding. So it grieves me that so many are willing to set aside doctrinal discussions simply because they can't put their feelings aside. And I'll throw myself into that simply because I couldn't set my feelings aside. People get offended that someone would question them and suggest that they could be wrong, and so they don't discuss it. I've had people even preface their encounters with statements like, "We don't discuss doctrine here." Been in like a Bible study setting, and heard that, and that's what caused me to write this article, because that was very grievous. Because doctrine, again, is my passion. There are certain topics of theology. There are certain topics of our faith that I'm very passionate about, that I believe are so vital and important and glorious, and I want to share those. And so if I get shut down right out the gate, it's grievous. If we don't discuss that here, it's like, well, all right, you just doused my flame. I've got nothing to offer here. So when people say that, don't they know that they're starving parts of the body? Some of us are gifted or called or have a passion specifically for doctrine. Could you imagine somebody saying, we don't do prayer here, or we don't discuss evangelism here, or there's going to be no exhortation here? But for some reason, doctrine gets separated as the one gift calling issue that we can suppress during our meetings. Purity in doctrine, again, is what burns in my heart. I want to have a correct understanding of the scriptures. I want to know Jesus Christ in truth. I want to know every aspect of him properly and correctly, because he's glorious. He's amazing. He's stunning, and when we see him in that proper light, it changes us. It's so joyous and just overwhelming to us. So, again, purity in doctrine is what burns in my heart, and it's what I see most often when I open the book, when I open the Bible. I see these particular issues in the scriptures, these particular doctrines that the Lord has made so vitally important to me. I see them over and over and over again when I'm reading the scriptures. I'm reading the scriptures through that light because I see those things over and over again. It rings in my heart, in most conversations. So when I hear somebody in error, it grieves me. It's an assault on the scriptures, so to speak. It's erroneous thinking is a foul smell, spiritually speaking. It tastes repulsive. It rings in my ears like a shotgun blast, and yet I'm told, keep quiet about it. We don't discuss that here. So I'm told that it's rude and divisive to correct somebody or to tell somebody that they're wrong, and that's prideful and arrogant. So I apologize that I don't have the tact to ease into these discussions, which, again, when I wrote this 8 years ago, was a true statement, is somewhat true, but I think I'm learning to be a little bit more gracious in the way I approach these things. But it would always seem to me to be dishonest to play around something without getting to the heart of it right away. And the analogy I had here was, if you saw somebody with food on their face, the right thing to do is to say, hey, you got some food right there. But we're so afraid to make somebody feel uncomfortable that we tiptoe around the subject. We may make subtle body language suggestions, like we wipe our face or scratch where the food is. We make attempts at getting to the problem without addressing the problem. And so it is with doctrine, so it would seem. We don't want to hurt feelings by telling somebody that they're in error. So we dance around it. We compromise and focus on the main things, which was always troublesome to me, because the things that I'm seeing in the scriptures are the main things to me. These are vitally important. So when somebody does confront, rather than wipe our face or grab a mirror to check, we get offended. We stubbornly deny having anything on our face, or we start ridiculing and pointing out the faults in the person confronting us. And it shouldn't be that way. When we're both worshiping the same God, and when we're both reading the same words, and we both have the same teacher in us, teaching us, we ought to be coming to the same conclusions. And that's as true today as it was when I wrote this 8 years ago. We're all reading the same book with the same spirit and the same faith, so we should be coming up with the same conclusions. When we don't, something's gone wrong. There's something wrong there, and we should be working together in humility to remedy that. And it's not prideful to think you're right. That's logic. Yeah, I would still agree with that statement that I wrote there. It would be insane and utterly confusing to walk around uncertain about everything. You would be blown about by every wind of the doctrine, as the scriptures say. We hold to ideas that we think are right. We believe those things are true if we're thinking people. But when challenged, we have to have the nobility, as the Bereans were called. They tested everything Paul was teaching them. We have to have the nobility and the courage and the humility to search the scriptures and to see whether or not we're correct. And we have to have the love to strive with our brothers and sisters in that humility when they have different opinions, to either bring them to a knowledge of the truth or to correct our own understanding and to submit to the truth. So Jesus said that he is the truth. That's why this is so important to me. That's why truth is of the utmost importance. In John 14:6, Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. And there's other scriptures too, like when Jesus said, Father, purify them by thy word is truth. And Pilate, asked Jesus, what is truth? If Pilate would have had a correct understanding of truth, things would have turned out a lot different for him. So truth is of so much importance. The scriptures tell us over and over that we're coming to a knowledge of Jesus Christ, that we're studying to show ourselves approved, that we're continually growing in knowledge of Jesus Christ that comes through an understanding of the truth. Anywhere that our thinking is in error, we are robbing from the glory of God. We're not experiencing the full glory of God. Knowing him in truth is experiencing his glory. And so we continually want to expand and purify and perfect our understanding of truth so that we see him clearer and we magnify him clearer and we rejoice in him in more purity. So it's absolutely vital to have truth. And that's what burned in my heart when I wrote this, and so it would grieve me when saints would brush it off as unimportant, when they would say a particular doctrine or subject that is important to me is not important and not worthy discussing, or where they would just dismiss me and refuse to have a conversation simply because they can't set their feelings aside, simply because they're saying, nope, I've made up my mind, I have my position, you have your position, we'll just, let that be. That would always hurt me. It's like, well, if we're both believers again, and we both have the same spirit, and we both have the same word, and you believe one thing, and I believe the opposite thing, one of us, or both of us, is in error. And if we're striving to know Jesus Christ, who is the truth, knowing the truth is knowing Jesus Christ. And so if one of us is, or both of us is in error, as believers, as brothers and sisters in the faith, we ought to go, hey, let's figure out where the error is so that we can see Jesus clearer, so that we can love Jesus in truth more purely. Debate and counterpoints and disagreements are not, like I say, they're not necessarily argumentative when there's humility involved. They're not divisive. It's how we learn. It's not unloving. It's how we communicate. It's how we wrestle with the Scriptures, how we wrestle with God to come to a knowledge of the truth. We lay hold of the horns of the altar and refuse to let go until God gives us that blessing, until He opens our understanding and opens our mind. That's how we collectively grow in a knowledge of the truth. So if you can show me through the Scriptures, not through opinion, because opinion, the heart is deceitful. We all have opinions and things that we hold to that aren't true. So, you have to come with the Scriptures. That is our absolute plumb line. So if you can show me through the Scriptures where I'm in error, hopefully I'll have the humility to submit my understanding to those Scriptures and to change my understanding. Because if I'm doing things correctly, I'm not concerned about how I feel about a certain thing or the emotional attachment I have to a particular teaching, or I'm not concerned about holding fast to my worldview. I'm only concerned about truth. If we're walking the way we ought to, I should only be concerned with knowing Jesus Christ in truth. And so the hope is that other brothers and sisters would do the same, that we'd all remain teachable. And part of that is skeptical. Skepticism is a good thing. The Bereans were not just gullible and just believed Paul because he was an intelligent guy and a charismatic guy, and he made good arguments and he seemed to have scriptural knowledge. They didn't just say, "Oh, okay." No, they went and studied the Scriptures and said, "Is what he's saying true?" That's skepticism, but that's also being teachable. That's such a perfect combination. So the hope is that we would set aside our feelings and emotional attachments to certain ideas, and we would just search for the truth, like we would for a buried treasure. If I think I have the treasure, and somebody says, "No, you don't have the treasure. Look at what the Scriptures say." I shouldn't just dismiss them and go, no, I got the treasure. If they've got Scriptures, I should go, whoa, hold on, maybe I don't have the treasure. Let me examine this. And then if I examine it and I go, oh, well, they're misinterpreting Scripture, they're taking things out of context, then I can dismiss the argument. But what if what they're saying is true and I've been wrong the whole time? Then I want to correct that. I want to get a hold of that glory. So, the hope is that we would all just dig in the Scriptures together, that we would strive together to come to a common knowledge, a common understanding, so that we can experience the glory of our truth, Jesus Christ, in purity. And so don't just dismiss one part of the body, and one gift of the Spirit, one passion that somebody has. If they say, I'm passionate about this particular doctrine, and you go, no, I've made up my mind on that. I don't want to discuss that. That you could be doing damage to somebody. That's their passion, their heart, their love. So let's all just remain humble and have the courage and humility and nobility to search the Scriptures, to examine and test all things to see whether or not the positions we hold are true. So that's what I got for this one. Like I say, I interjected quite a bit of updates to this article because my thinking has changed a lot on it. So, hopefully it's beneficial. Hopefully the Lord will bless this to our sanctification and edification and growth. As always, if you're just catching the end of this, you weren't able to watch the whole thing, subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can watch this and all my videos at your convenience. It's King Ram 417. That's K, my middle initial, Ingram, my last name, 417. If you don't like YouTube, I'm on Rumble with the same username. And you can watch this and all my videos at your convenience. All right, I appreciate you guys watching. I love you, and Lord willing, we'll talk to you next time.